It's a great pleasure to meet everyone this evening, and we have a friend over here from Nablus, which is very, very good, and it's lovely to meet you. And I did say to our friend that if I get any facts wrong with regards to the West Bank, I do apologise. I have had the fortune, I've actually worked for St John Hospital for over 4 years now, so I hit my 4-year mark 2 months ago. And I actually know both East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem and Israel and Palestine for different reasons, historic reasons in my past. For me to then, and that was partly why I got the job 4.5 years ago, or 4 years, 3 months ago, was because I did have insight many years ago into both Israel and Palestine, and I actually worked for the art councils out there. I tried to do a big arts project and how we could bridge the East and West. I was very naive at the time. I was younger and not as knowledgeable about the complexities and about the hardships that actually the Palestinian people have to go through. So for me personally, to then come to St John Jerusalem Hospital Group, and actually I had the fortune of working out there for 2 months at a time, and to go out on outreach. I'll tell you a little bit more about outreach when I give my talk. But for me personally, to learn firsthand about the beauty of the Palestinian people, the generosity of the Palestinian people, and the friendship of the Palestinian people was astounding for me, particularly given, and we are a non-political charity. To gain charitable status, you cannot have a political stance. Having said that, you can provide the facts, and there are many facts that make you realise that that environment is terrible for the people that live there, that are Palestinian, and refugees, and Bedouins, and the fact that there are buses for Israelis and Palestinian people cannot get on those buses. There is an apartheid out there, and it's an apartheid that nobody in the world really cares about. And I always say that the Palestinian people are the forgotten people, because people do care about people in Africa, people do care about people elsewhere, people genuinely don't seem that interested in the Palestinian people, from my experience. And I'll kind of show that a little bit in terms of how we work as an eye hospital. So it's been an absolute honour for me personally to work for such an amazing group of people that are forgotten and that do need more people to recognise that they need help in all sorts of ways. So thank you very much. So to give you the context of the work that we do, I thought it was important to give you the Palestinian environment. You already know these facts, but I'll give them to you again anyway. So in Palestine, there's the wall, that magical wall that, according to the Israelis, keeps them safe, and according to the Palestinians, keeps them in enclaves. There's 4.2 million Palestinians in East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza. In the West Bank, the average age is 19, and in Gaza, the average age is 16. Intermarriage is very common in the environment. Much to do with actually keeping the wealth within the family as well. It's quite common all throughout the Middle East, and that does bring a lot of health problems. Another major factor for the health problems is that more than 50% of Palestinians live on less than $2.1 per day. So there's 3 main health concerns that will affect eye care in Palestine. So first of all, the restriction of movement. There's 3 types of ID cards in Palestine. If you have the East Jerusalem ID card, you're lucky. Your movement is a lot easier than those in the West Bank. And then if you're in Gaza, your movements are very, very restricted. Because we are a Christian foundation, we're very much an interfaith charity, but because we have been there for 150 years, and we are a Christian foundation, it does open certain doors for us in terms of getting people out of Gaza to get their eye care sorted out in our East Jerusalem Hospital if they need it. We're very proud of that fact. So it does work to our advantage, history that we do have as a charity, because as I said, it does help us get people to the hospital when they need it. I mean, the fact that there's a hospital down the road, but if you are a Palestinian, you will not be able to go on the Israeli road that will take you there in 10 minutes. You will have to go on roads with roadblocks, nodding, Ben, that could take up to 2 hours. And obviously the time between 10 minutes and 2 hours, if you're ill and got something seriously wrong with you, can be devastating. So movement restriction is a big problem for the Palestinian people. There's also public health problems, mainly in women and children. There is a known iron deficiency. Over a quarter of children under the age of 5 have iron deficiency, and 33% of women of a childbearing age have iron deficiency. There's chronic malnutrition under the age of 5 is over 10%. 33% of children of the population in Palestine are under the age of 10. So that's 33% of 4.2 million. There's also, given the nature of their environment, which is constant checkpoints, restrictions in terms of their movements. If they live in a certain environment, they're not allowed out in that environment. So obviously that brings psychosocial problems. And there's very little known ability to help people with psychological problems in that environment. And then there's also an increased non-communicable diseases, such as heart disease, hypertension, malignancy, and particularly relevant to eye care, diabetes. Then the second health concern for the Palestinian people is money. Particularly when it comes to healthcare. Alarmingly, over the past year, health is no longer on the agenda at the UN and at the US aid level. We ourselves had £500,000 cut out of our budget by the UN because they said that they could no longer fund healthcare. The funding for healthcare had to be given to the Palestinian Authority, who would then cover healthcare. Now, unfortunately, the Palestinian Authority is not necessarily well equipped to use that funding for healthcare. So sometimes that funding doesn't go to where it's supposed to go. And this is the same case with the Department for International Development here in London. They will not fund healthcare. So funding for healthcare has become less and less popular. And needless to say, the need for funding for healthcare increases. The additional concerns with regards to why funding for healthcare has not been given is that one of the stances is that Hamas could use that money for terrorist activities, and another reason that they give is that, particularly in America, is that the Palestinian full state bid at the UN level will harm reviving the peace process. Needless to say, I'm not allowed to give my political opinion on that, but that's a fact. And then third is security. Lasting security issues have resulted in casualties and the destruction of such as power plants, which result in electricity shortage. Electricity shortage is obviously vital, particularly in hospitals, when you're trying to provide people with the correct surgeries. If you have a power cut, it's disastrous. We have a lovely story about a power cut in Gaza. Needless to say, there's always power cuts in Gaza. And our Gazan doctors used their Nokia phones as lights to actually carry out procedures. And so we should really be getting money from Nokia for the work that we do. Unfortunately, we haven't got it yet. But as a fundraiser, it's always my job to look at these things. And then another one is water cisterns. Again, when there's water contamination in cisterns, this is devastating within hospitals. We had water contamination in our hospital in Gaza. And again, on the healthcare of the people themselves, it can impact on their health, giving them serious problems such as diarrhea. Then another fact is that the Palestinian people use 50 litres per person per day for domestic purposes, and that this is a quarter of what Israelis use. So now you've got some Palestinian general facts. What about the eye hospital? How did that happen? What is the Eye Hospital Group? Well, we've been there for 130. It's got a mind of its own. The Eye Hospital Group have been there for 130 years. It was resurrected in Queen's Victoria time. It does have a longer history than that, but I won't go into it today because the history might not be that conducive to what we're actually trying to achieve in the 21st century. But we've been going for 130 years, and I would say that over the past 20 years there's been extreme developments in so much as we are no longer what might be perceived as a traditional colonial charity, but we are actually one of the highest and best employers of Palestinian people in the region. Our staff the majority of our staff are Palestinian, about 98% Palestinian. We do also employ Jewish people, and we also employ Christians from, or anybody. The faith is not relevant, but we also have people from America, etc. We also have a visiting doctors program. Visiting doctors can come from all over the world, and they come to bring expertise and carry out surgery that other people can't carry out, particularly, I can't say the long word because I'm not a doctor, and you might know the word, but VR surgery is very complex, and we often will bring over people particularly to train and to carry out surgeries when it's needed, and also cosmetic surgery when it's required. Cosmetic surgery is particularly relevant, as is the whole thing about wearing glasses, because the people in the environment, again, because of lack of education, lack of opportunity, if a child has got a squint, they might be kept in home out of shame, and they might not be sent to school. And then if a woman wears glasses, she might be perceived as not being good marriage material. So things like that are also areas that we also look into in terms of education and knowledge. We have a hospital in East Jerusalem, which is our biggest hospital, and that's where we do more complex surgeries, and that's where people will come from Gaza, will come from outreach, and will come from other hospitals in the north and south if more complex surgery is required. We've also got a hospital in Hebron in the south, and that specialises in diabetic retinopathy, and we've got a hospital in Anapta in the north. And the north is a poorer environment. And our Anapta clinic is a great success. It's been a great success this year, and we've seen more patients this year in Anapta than we have ever before. We also have a fantastic outreach programme. Now, our outreach programme is very basic. It's doctors and nurses get in a van. I've had the fortune of going with them on numerous occasions. You get in the van and you go to a village or Bedouin centre where the people in the environment will be told of the coming of the outreach guys in their van by 2 or 3 days before by the mosque. So there'll be an announcement made, and for me it was a wonderful sight because people come from their villages, they come as families. They might think that only one of them has got one problem when they come, but actually the whole family gets seen. And these are people that might never have actually been seen because there is no health register in Palestine, and people will not automatically be sent to a doctor just to make sure your health's okay. So they will all come with the family, and they also might come because they've been sent to a PA hospital, they've had bad eye surgery and it needs corrected. And as you can imagine, the eye is a very complex and sensitive entity, and to have bad eye surgery will lead to blindness. And they'll often come to us again if they've got cataract and problems or got glaucoma problems, and the waiting list at the PA hospitals is so long that they will come to us because they can't wait 2 years. You know, there's certain problems that will need to be seen as immediately. So our outreach is very important, and it was the outreach that actually lost the UN funding, because again the UN said they couldn't fund health, therefore they were going to cut our health funding for our outreach programme. And these are the people that can't get to us because they're so poor. These are the people that will walk for 2 or 3 days just to get to see us because they haven't got money for a bus or a taxi. So again, our outreach is very important. We also have partnership relationships, and we believe that that's incredibly useful and developmental for our charity. We work with Hadassah in West Jerusalem. We also work with Moorfields here in London, and we work with Thames Valley University because we have a teacher training programme, and we teach local people on the ground because there's a great lack of good skills on the ground, and it's our job to not be an aid dependency charity, but a charity that gives sustainability to those around us. So teaching and training is very, very important, and there's a great lack of good doctors and nurses in Palestine, and we pride ourselves that we don't, a cataract operation isn't £17 in Palestine, it's £500 because it's the treatment, it's the aftercare, it's making sure that they have the medicine, and medicine in Palestine is very, very important and very expensive, and we have to buy it from Israel, so there's always a lose-lose situation out there. Right, moving on to patient statistics. We're very proud of our statistics because compared to a hospital of the same size in London or in the UK, the fact that we run on just under 7 million and yet we treat over 100,000 patients, and we have a teacher training programme, and we do many other things including education, is astounding. And the one thing I didn't say is that when our doctors and nurses go on outreach, and this could be one doctor, 3 nurses, they can see 50 patients in one morning. And that's 50 patients getting proper treatment, because I've been with them and I've watched them do it, it's brilliant. So in 2009, we saw 93,384 patients. 2010 was a record year for us, because it was the most we've ever seen. So 102,383 patients were treated. And this year, even though our funding is down, we will see more patients than ever before. And that is in part thanks to our incredible Director of Nursing, Ahmed Mali. And again, our nurses and doctors don't all live in East Jerusalem. Now that's a problem when they have to work in East Jerusalem, because again, they need their ID cards to get in. And these ID cards get renewed monthly. If Israel decides not to allow them the ID card, they could be sitting at home for a week or longer. So Ahmed Mali doesn't live in East Jerusalem, so he will stay there during the week, as many of our nurses and doctors do. We have accommodation for our nurses and doctors to stay on site, so that they then go home at the weekends to be with their families to make it easier. Right, next. Why eye care? Well, I'm sure you've gauged why eye care is important, but I'll just reiterate the facts. The rate of blindness is 10 times higher than in developing countries, and that includes Israel. 33% of the population is under the age of 10, and the incidence of conditions particularly affecting children, such as squints, infantile glaucoma, cataracts and trauma, is very high. Now, a squint in this country will be detected probably between the age of nothing and 1, because the child will go to the doctor, go to the hospital, and they will get seen generally. Often in Palestine, a child you will not be seen by a doctor until you're the age of 4, and by that time the squint can be at quite a bad stage. Now, it can be easily corrected. It's just a patch on the weaker eye, and then you can correct it. So one of the things that we aim to do is get children seen under the age of 4, so that any problem that they have can be corrected, and so that their sight can now be saved. Diabetes. Diabetes is a pandemic medical and social scourge in the region. 12 to 15% of the population sufferers are 3 times more prevalent than in the West. In this country, people get screened from diabetes and treated for diabetes on a regular basis. One of our goals, and we've just achieved funding from the World Diabetes Foundation, is to make sure that screening for diabetes happens throughout the whole of Palestine. And we're very proud that we're actually starting that process. Diabetic retinopathy affects up to 80% of all diabetes. Diabetic retinopathy is diabetes of the eye. And I'm probably not saying it completely correctly because there is medical people in our midst, but yeah, so that's that fact. So now I'll give you a couple of case studies. Now, we have an amazing social worker who will look at the patients that need our help the most. Most patients we try to encourage to get some kind of the word? I've lost the word. Insurance, that's the word, because there's no healthcare out there, but if they've got insurance, then there's a type of health insurance that you can purchase, and it will cover up to 1/3 of the costs. We do encourage that because it gives people a status and it gives them their own right to then get healthcare. But obviously, given the fact that most of, over 50% of the population live on $2.1 per day, this is not possible for everyone. So we have many, many patients that cannot afford healthcare and cannot afford even the 30% that we try to ask them for, because part of our income generation is through insurances. And the Nigeria family is such a family. And again, we found out about the family and their needs because one would cover the problem and our doctor would say, if you're all here, let's look at all of you. So we've got Abdullah, who is 3, and his sister Sundus. Abdullah has childhood cataracts. Now, childhood cataracts is very rare in this country. And Sundus has congenital cataracts and lazy eye. And then the father, who is 43, he has retinal detachment, cataract, glaucoma, and corneal problems, which obviously means he can't work. And there is also the hurdle that he might not be able to find work, but obviously if he can't work, how is he going to find the money for the treatments for all of his children and himself? So again, this is why our work is so important, and that's why we have our Patient Relief Fund, which I'll touch on later on. And we have many, many, many case studies, many stories like this, and you can find them on our website, so please do look at our website if you want to learn more. Then we've got Shahrukh. Now Shahrukh was a very sad case when she came in, because Shahrukh had her moods were very bad because she was so frustrated because of her various ailments. And there was no special school or special centre that could help Shahrukh or her family, because there's no such facilities for her in Palestine. So her parents are first cousins, so she has, there's congenital problems for Shahrukh. She's 17, I mean obviously she doesn't look 17, but she's 17. Her disorders were rheumatoid arthritis, growth retardation, developmental delay and cataract in both eyes. Now, we were able to treat Shahrukh, so it is a happy story, because we were able to improve her vision and her quality of life, and obviously the quality of life of her family as well, because she's no longer aggressive, she's much happier. So if she's happier, then the family obviously have that weight of responsibility taken off them as well. And again, this is thanks to our incredible nurses and doctors who work way beyond the call of duty for the people that need it most in the environment. So then that comes to my role and the role of our fundraising. Obviously we can't do any of the work that we do without money. This year our expenditure will be roughly 6.8 million. A third of that money, as I said, comes from the PA when they decide to give us the money. They are supposed to give us money, and we're one of the more fortunate hospitals because our backlog of payment from them is not as bad as other hospitals. So we get some money from the Palestinian authorities, we get some money from insurances, but then 2/3 of the money we raise. Now, I'm very proud of the fact, as the head of fundraising and marketing for our charity, that we cost 5% of overall funding. We do everything ourselves in our offices. We have one small office in Jerusalem, and we have an office here in London. I haven't flown over from Jerusalem today for this talk, unfortunately, because I love Jerusalem and I love Palestine. So our very small office does everything, and most charities cost 30% of costs for fundraising and marketing. So we can hand on heart say that 95 pence in the pound goes to the cause, and 5% in the pound goes to the cost. Now the expenditure, as you can imagine, it's mainly doctors and nurses. So our staff costs take up most of the money that we need to raise. And we do have a staff sponsorship programme. We actually have we have kind of adopt a nurse as well. You'll find further information about that at the back of the room. And we've got wonderful groups of people around the world. They're volunteer groups called the Priories, and they are a legacy of St John. But these are wonderful groups that go and raise money on our behalf, and they all sponsor nurses and doctors. They are supposed to sponsor the post, but fortunately or unfortunately, they become very attached to the individual concerned, so they tend to kind of adopt their own nurses and doctors. But it's a great way for us to get money so that we can then use the other money that we raise to actually help with diabetes, help with glaucoma, help with the problem of cataract, etc. So that's staff sponsorship. And we have 226 members of staff. As I said, the majority are Palestinian. The lovely thing about any Jewish people that come to work in our charity, we have one VR surgeon who had actually been an Israeli soldier. She was a Hadassah. She was very much of the belief that Palestine and Israel should be separate, that the Palestinian people were terrorists, etc. She came to work at our hospital, and within a year she changed her mind. And it's people like that that are fantastic spokespeople for our charity, because they're the people that will go out and make people change their mind outside of the environment of St John and outside the environment of Palestine. And we also have a wonderful Professor Merrin, who is a Holocaust survivor, and Professor Merrin, as you might gauge, is very old, and he volunteers, he teaches at our hospital, and again he's an amazing advocate for the work that we do. Health can be an amazing bridge for peace, and it can be an amazing bridge for understanding. And if our charity can help develop understanding of what actually is going on out there and what should be getting done out there, then fantastic. So we have fundraising priorities. We actually have 3 fundraising priorities coming up for us. Our fundraising priority is always gaining money for staff sponsorship, and we're always looking for new ideas and new leads and new opportunities to raise money. We have a problem with the corporate sector, so if anyone's got leads into corporate sectors that they think might be able to help, do let us know. We're always open for ideas. We have 3 fundraising priorities this year. Staff sponsorship, as I said, patient relief funding. Our goal is to raise 1 million for patient relief funding. Again, the more money that we can raise for patient relief funding, the more outreach work we can do, and the more people that we can reach. And then our third priority, which I've not bullet pointed there, is Gaza. We actually have acquired land in Gaza. It's always a bit strange when you acquire land in Gaza, because you're never quite sure if you're going to have it one week or the next. But we've got land opposite the university, which we're very excited about, because we have planned to build a brand new big eye hospital opposite the university, obviously helping the masses of people that need our help in Gaza. There are more doctors in Gaza because obviously they can't get out, so there are doctors and nurses in Gaza that we can bring into the hospital. And also it means that we can work with the university and start training the kids at the university so that they can become skilled, and then they've got an opportunity, and there's very few opportunities in Gaza for the people, so again, if we can create more opportunities, then fantastic. Thank you very much.